Well, hello everyone. Thank you for tuning in for another wonderful project recap video at QC. We got Mark here, yeah, Mark, why don't you introduce yourself first?
Yeah. So my name is Mark Shields. I've been with Quality Counts since December 2014. Started in Carolina operations, managing our private and public contract work out of Charlotte and Raleigh, North Carolina, and then kind of moved to different groups within the company: sales, marketing, software development. Currently, still overseeing software development, but also do or I guess manage a lot of the Midwest work out of Chicago and St. Clair Shores, New Detroit.
Yeah, cool, Mark. So, yeah, you got a project to share. This is a project I know nothing about. Why don't you start by just giving us an overview of the project?
Yeah. So we occasionally do origin destination studies. I thought this would be a good one to pick out because I do think there's some confusion as to how we perform them nowadays. Historically, origin destination studies were largely done with license plate matching, but over the years of you know trying to produce good data and reliable data sets using license plate matching, I think there are other methods that are better suited. It's just challenging to have, I guess, like a field installation that can accurately see plates. The equipment that we use to is not really made for that kind of purpose. Most LPR technology is for like parking enforcement, those sorts of things. Um, so we're mainly doing a couple other approaches for OD studies now, for like really small cut through studies, typically using ground level cameras, occasionally using drones. And then as the project areas get larger, as they expand out, when you're looking more regional, citywide, statewide, even using GPS data, LBS, CV, some other form of big data source, since it's not really feasible to match vehicles across a much larger geography than than I guess what I'll show you today. Um, so this particular project, this came from an engineering firm out of Chicago, and they do a lot of like unique cut through study projects like this. I'll share the map. Um, so what they were doing is they were performing some count work in an OD study for the city to assess solutions for cut through traffic on Knapp Street, which you can see here running north south. And as you can imagine, the traffic that was cutting through, what they believed to be cutting through, was doing so to dodge the lights at Plainfield and Theodore, Larkin and Theodore, and Larkin and Lincoln Highway up here. So it's a little bit of a triangle of intersections here that if you took a westbound right turn, you could basically just cut through on Knapp, take a right turn, and continue on traveling north on Larkin. It turns into Weber Road there, but heading north from there. So we were collecting some turning limit counts already along that road, and went ahead and scoped it for an origin destination study for the same time periods. And again, going back to kind of that like methodology selection, could have probably flown a drone to be able to see something like this, but since we were already setting up for TMCs, and we don't want to have to use a methodology that's like weather dependent or dependent on FAA restrictions, regulations, that kind of thing. It's easy enough for us to just capture everything in one day and process the video from Knapp Street, from those locations along that roadway, to identify matching vehicles and measure that cut through traffic. So kind of a straightforward study. Not really anything crazy about it. And as you could expect, I'll show you the data or the final report in a minute, but we did show a lot of that behavior actually occurring during that 12-hour period.
Okay, so then the cars were going westbound on, is that 7?
Yep.
And then they would go north on that smaller road,
Yep.
instead of continue going westbound and then going north on, what road is that? Franklin or Larkin?
Yeah, it's a little tough because like the roads keep changing names. Like this one is Lincoln and Plainfield. It has two separate names, and then Larkin turns into Weber north of Knapp. So it's a little it's a little challenging to get the names kind of figured out, just
And
in
so
this
then
area.
how would we so we're trying to count the cars that were just cutting through basically. So
Yes.
then they turned right, they were going westbound, they turned right, and then they did not go to any of these businesses or homes, and they went up and turned right again at North Larkin.
Yeah. So the way we identify that, through the scoping process is to discuss with the client, like, what are the movements of concern? What are you trying to isolate? So once we identified, it's an eastbound left or a westbound right turn from Theodore heading north, and then arriving at that far north location, and then making a right or left turn, and then the same in a reverse. Like, once we know that that's what we're looking for, we can decide how do we set up our cameras to film that. So we set up in such a way where we have the same view of each vehicle as it as it hits the origin point and the destination point. So, like, for the northbound vehicles, you want to be looking at either just the backs of each vehicle or the front of each vehicle. That allows us to assess what the travel time is from A to B, and then we can just look for matches using that like offset time when we're playing back the video. So if we see that it takes about, I don't know, 45 seconds to a minute to travel from south to north, we can, basically just play this northern video 45 to 60 seconds ahead of the southern video, and then the same thing in the reverse order for capturing southbound matches.
Cool. It sounds like the challenging part might just be like what you just said, like what's the most elegant way to get this done?
Yeah.
Because it's going to be a unique thing. What other challenges presented themselves here?
It's not really all that bad. I think camera setup is the biggest issue. Just having really good angles to identify everything we need to identify is always the biggest challenge. A little bit more challenging when you're dealing with like a direct east-west roadway, and depending on your camera angle, if you're staring directly into the sun during the morning hours. So anything that can obscure a vehicle can be a little bit problematic. So when our tech set this up, I know he set up way more cameras than were actually required at both of these sites, just to make sure from any one angle, front or back of vehicle, we could see the same car end up at the next location and be able to definitively say, yes, that is the same car. So anything that can enhance our ability to quickly ID those matches, like that's the most important, I think, the most critical out of this.
What'd you learn here? You've done a million projects. This was a
Um,
unique one.
it is. I learned, I think, two things. One is our processing team does a really good job with those unique studies. I had actually, this was, performed several months ago, but after we delivered the OD report, and I'll pull that up, I had commented just how, I guess, like, well defined and clear everything was in the report. Hopefully you can see this, but just to kind of walk you through this, there are the same data is broken out in a variety of ways. So knowing from location to location as a percent of origin volume or destination volume at either site is like the highest level way to ID those matches, or match percentage, match rates, whatever you want to call them. But we took it a step further. So after we sent this to the client came back and they're like, can you guys break this down by hour so we can see how those cut throughs change throughout the day? And within a day, they reproduced the entire report. We had all the raw data, which I'll show you here in a second as well. But they were able to break it out by hour. So this is that same summary by hour for just, from intersection to intersection. It goes further into origin destination by movement. So rather than just location, it's specifically, okay, if they make an eastbound left at Knapp Street and Theodore, and then, what percentage vehicles, what's the total number of vehicles that are then making a left or right turn at that next location. And it's the same for every combination of movements. And then taking that yet a step further was breaking that same metric down by hour. So this is more granular than I've seen it. I think this is definitely one thing I learned is, for a longer duration OD study, ask about how they want the intervals broken out. I didn't anticipate needing to deliver hourly. It's not generally something we do for OD studies. Usually everything's just looked at in aggregate across the time period. But this was a new one, and it was something they quickly responded within a couple of days of getting the deliverable, and our team was able to revise it and turn it around within, I think it was about 24 hours. Taking this a step further, this is the TMC data, so that's to determine like total originating and destination volumes by site. And then this is the match data, which I thought was interesting. And I hadn't really looked at this before this project. But what I was mentioning with the travel time is those are listed for each vehicle that we identified as a match or not. So we're able to see and calculate like average travel time between any 2 points and any nodes in between if needed for the OD study. That helps us, really confirm that yes, that is indeed the same vehicle because it's on average or within, I guess, like a small margin of error of what the average is for the travel time between those 2 points. If it came up like, if it was a plate study, but it came up 5 minutes later, we would know, okay, they did something in between those two intersections that I think would probably take them out as being like a pure cut through movement. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the last few seconds here, do you know what was the conclusion that yes, there is a problem? And then B, do you know what they did about it, or do you have any sense of what they were thinking they would do about this problem?
Definitely identified that it is a problem. So from that southern one, that was Knapp and Theodore. Yeah, so from southern side of Knapp and Theodore to Larkin and Ave. Yeah, I mean, you can see your percent of destination volume at Larkin and Knapp was, 75% came from Knapp and Theodore. So 75% of the volume came from that southern intersection. That's a very substantive amount. As far as corrective measures, not sure yet, but I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. We don't do a lot of after studies, but it would be very interesting to see and kind of measure like the efficacy of some of the solutions that engineers are proposing based on doing an after study. So hopefully we get that opportunity, but if not, I'll just have to check it out next time I'm in Chicago.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate your time. Yeah, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And if y'all want to talk to Mark and do any cool projects with him or us, let us know. All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.